In Microsoft Access, we can easily create databases with help of the graphical user interface and the software tools. Now let's start the MS Access application. To do that, you can use search bar and type Access and open that application. Or else you can select Access from the list of applications listed here. This is what you will see when you open Access application for the first time. Here you have an option to create a new database, or you can open already created database by using this Open Other Files option. If you click on this Open Other Files, it will navigate to this and you can browse for the database you are going to open and open it. Now I am going to use this blank database option to create a new database. Here in this place, we have to provide a name for the database we are going to create. This section contains two parts, the database name as well as the extension. This part is the name of the file and this part is the name of the extension. That means the type of the database file. I'm going to change this file name as student. I'm going to use the same place which displays here to store my student database. If you wish to select another place, you can click on this option and select a place to store your database file. I'm going to use the same place as given here and I'm going to create the database. Once you click on this create icon, it will create the database for you. As you are aware, most of the Microsoft Office applications have similar user interface design. For an example, in this interface, you can see a ribbon which is a bit similar to what you see in Microsoft Word. Here you can see there are a number of tabs with different options. In this lesson, we are not going to talk about all these options given in each tab, but you will learn most of the important options in coming lessons. As you are aware, a database consists of a collection of tables. Here we see one such table which is already created by default. To create a new table, we have to select Create tab and we can click on this table option. Once we click on the Create Table option, a table will be displayed in this navigation pane. And when you select the tabs which are open in this side, you can see the design and the data of those tables. To weave that, we have two weave options. One is Design Weave and the other is Datasheet Weave. The data we have in this Access database is contained in database objects and treated as separate documents. For an example, this table 1 and table 2 are considered as separate objects. Therefore, we have to open and save them individually. For an example, even if I created two tables here, I haven't saved any of them. When I click on this Save option, this prompts to save each object I have created, rather saving the entire database at once. I'm going to rename this table as Employee. And when I click on the other tab and click the Save button, again it prompts to save that object as well. Now I'm going to save this table as Department and click OK. Now I have two tables, table department, and table employee. To close an object, you can select this cross on the right of the document tabs bar, or you can right-click on a tab, select Close or Close All. If you want to rename any of these objects or tables, first you have to check whether it is open or not. If it is open, you have to close that tab, and then you can rename it by right-clicking on the relevant object in the navigation pane and select Rename. When you try to rename your objects without closing that, it will prompt you that the object cannot be renamed because it is open. If so, you have to close that object and then you can rename it. Now when I try to rename again, it allows to rename that object. I'm going to rename this table as student, and now I can open it back here. If you want to close your database, you can close it by selecting the close option given in the backstage view. Here we have close option. When you close, the database you have created will be closed from this Access application. If you want to open it again, you can again go back to the backstage view and then open the relevant document you have already created. When you have opened your document, if you see this kind of a message, click this Enable Content, and then it will be displayed correctly. Now I'm going to create a new database using this backstage view. Here I have option to create a blank database. I'm going to name this database as ABC Company, and this is the extension of the database file. I'm going to save it in the same location which this displays, and I'm going to create. Here I have a table. This is not saved yet. I'm going to save it as employee table, so it will save, and at the same time it will be renamed as employee. I'm going to create another table named department. I can create a table using this option. I'm going to create another table. I have created another table, and I'm going to save it as department. For this practical session, I'm going to use the same example I have taken for the lesson, and their employee table contains employee ID, name, as well as department ID. Therefore, I need to change the design of this table. To do that, we have to weave this table in its design web. A table can be weaved using two different weaves, a design weave and a datasheet weave. Once we click on the table and select Weave Options, we can see different views of these tables. For an example, if we select Datasheet Weave, it will display this outline, and if we select Design Weave, it will display this outline. Design Weave means it will show the design outline of your table. And when we change into the datasheet weave, it will display whatever the information you store in your table. We can change these weaves by right-clicking on these tabs also. Once we right-click on these tabs, you can see Design Weave and Datasheet Weave here. Let's change the design outline of this employee table. Here we have to mention each field name as well as its data type. Field name means the column name. Data type means the type of data that we are going to store within the table. When you are assigning field names for these fields, there are certain guidelines to be followed. A field name can consist of up to 64 characters, including letters, numbers, spaces, and special characters without period, exclamation mark, grave accent, and square brackets. And also, a field name cannot begin with a space. You always remember to capitalize the first letter of each word in a field name. You will have to use concise field names that are easy to remember and reference, that won't take a lot of space in the table datasheet. If you use abbreviations, then use some standard abbreviations such as NUM for number, AMT for amount, QTY for quantity, and so on. And also, when you are using data types, again, you will have to think of the possible data types which allows to be included into this MS Access data tables. Here you see the data types which are possible to insert into your Access database. The data type short text can be used if you are inserting alphanumeric data, for an example, names, titles, and numbers if you don't want to use those numbers for calculations. And if you use short text, it can include up to 255 characters. If you want to add more than 255 characters, you will have to use long text. Long text can contain up to 64,000 characters. And you can use number or large number for numeric data, date and time extended for dates and times, currency data type for monetary data, and you can use auto number if you want to use auto-generated number which will be incremented when you insert new record. And yes or no can be used if you want to insert Boolean values. Boolean values means true or false values. And if you want to insert pictures or graphics, you can use OLE objects. And hyperlink can be used if you want to store a link address, and so on. For this employee table, I'm going to use employee ID as the first column. Employee ID should be an integer value. Therefore, I'm going to use number data type here. And the second column is employee name. And the data type can be marked as text. And the third column should be department ID. Again, this should be an integer value, and I'm going to use this number data type. Now we have changed the design of the employee table. Let's save these changes. Now I'm going to move back to the datasheet view and add records to this employee table. I'm going to use employee ID 501. Employee name is Pereira, and the department ID is Department 1. Next record is 502. Employee name is Jason, and the department ID is 2. Third record is 503. Anushka, Department 3. And the last record I'm going to use here is 504. Fahim, department ID 3. Now I have added the data into this employee table. I'm going to save employee table and move on to this department table. Similarly, this department table also should be designed the way we need it. I'm going to add the first field as department ID. It should be a number, and department name it should be a text. Now I'm going to save this and move back to the datasheet view and add some records. Department 1, and the department name is account, and second department is marketing, and the third department is HR. Now I have finished creating both the tables, and I'm going to save the changes I made. And I have two tables, each with the data relevant to these entities. As you are aware, when we store data within these tables, we should be able to uniquely identify each of these rows. To do that, we use the notion of primary keys. Primary key should be a unique key which could be able to use to uniquely identify each rows. In this employee table, we can take this employee ID as the primary key. We can set primary keys using this design view. When we move back to the design view, we can see a key here. This key denotes the primary key field. As you see here, employee ID is marked as the primary key. If you want to change the primary key, you can select the field you want to add as a primary key, and then you can mark it as the primary key. So I'm going to move back and select this employee ID field and then mark it as the primary key. For the department table also, we can weave the design weave and then select the field and mark the primary key. This is already marked as the primary key. Therefore, I'm going to keep as it is. Now we have two tables with proper primary keys. But still we do not have a relationship between employee and the department tables. To establish the relationship, we need a special key named a foreign key. As you are aware, to establish the relationship between table employee and the table department, we need a special key named a foreign key. Let's see how to create the relationship between employee and the department tables. Select the Design tab, and then there you will see this Relationships option. When we click Relationships option, all the tables we have in this database will be displayed. I can add those tables into this tab. Once I click on an item and click Add, it will be added into this place. I'm going to close this and I'm going to connect these two tables together. So here we have employee table and here we have department table. Employee ID is the primary key of employee table and department ID is the primary key of the department table. Foreign key is a primary key from one table added to another table. In this example, this is the primary key of department table and it is added to this employee table to serve as the foreign key. Therefore, I'm going to connect this department ID and this department ID. Now we can click on the department ID and drag it and drop it here on the department ID of the department table. Once we do that, it will display Edit Relationships window. There we see department table as well as employee table. Then we can select the relevant fields from each of these tables and then create the relationship. But before creating that, make sure to put this tick to enforce referential integrity constraints. When we enforce the referential integrity, it will verify the contents of the table during the data entry. If you leave it out, it will not verify the contents of the table during the data entry. I'm going to leave this out for now and create the relationship. Now we have the database ABC company and two tables, employee and department, and also these two tables are related through this department ID. This is the basic idea about creating databases and tables and relationships. There are more functions that you can use when you are creating your databases and accessing data from the database.